Okay. Today we're going to talk about another type of research called survey research. Well, this type of research, usually we do some sampling from a larger population. That's why sometimes we call this type of research a sample survey research. How much the results of the research from the sample can be generalized to the wider population depends very much upon the representativeness of the sample to that population. In other words, it depends on your sampling techniques, whether the sample can represent the population, how well it can represent the population. Okay. Here is a picture that I try to draw, hand drawing. I don't have any proper tools to draw it. If you have better tools, they can make a simulation of drawing a sample from a district, a province, or a city. But now let's just say the larger circle is the population, and the smaller circle is the sample from that population. How well the sample represents the population would determine the quality of a sample survey research. Before we proceed, I think we should look at some technical terms so that we can have a common understanding when we talk about the survey research. The first technical term is the population. You know the population, but in research, population means the total number of units of what we want to study, such as the total number of King's College students. This is the population. The Buddhist monks in Chiang Mai, total number of Buddhist monks in Chiang Mai is the population. If we want to study the Buddhist monk in Chiang Mai, or total number of senator of Thailand, if we want to study them. If we can study the whole population, that would be very, very great, very, very desirable. But in reality, the cost would become prohibitive to do so. So that's why we have to rely on the sample that we draw from such a population. I think in a near future, when we can handle a very big data, we can forget this type of sampling, or all, most, if not all, the statistics that rely on sample, which means we can go directly to the characteristics of the population directly. A parameter is the values that we measured from the population. Normally in statistics, they would use the Greek alphabet as a symbol for the value of the parameters. And statistics are the values that we measured from sample using Roman alphabet as a symbol. For example, you can have mu for the mean population, and you can have what else? X bar for the means of the sample. But anyway, when you come across the Greek alphabet, it would refer to the parameter of the population. But for the English letters or the Roman letter, it is the values that we measure not from the population but from the sample. Okay. Now, what does sample means? Population is the total unit. Sample means a subset of the population that we choose to study. For example, we draw 5% of the King's College student. That would be our sample. Or we take 50% of the total number of senators in Thailand. That would be our sample in the study. Another one is a sampling unit. Sampling unit refers to each member of the population. Population of 1,000, we have 1,000 sampling units. See, and we draw how many sampling units from that population to be our sample. The next one is sampling frame. Sampling frame refers to a list of all sampling units. In practice, we normally use the sampling frame that already existed. We cannot build up our sampling frame anew because that would cost so much time, effort, and money to do it. And already existed sampling frame is something as the household registration that the government did that already for us. We can use that type of registration. A list of eligible voters in the electoral district. Just go to that place, ask for the list of the registration of the eligible voters, and we draw a sample from that sampling frame. Okay. Now, I'm sorry that I have changed it into English, but you see this is a mistake that people use the inappropriate sampling frame. I would show you. 1936. How many years ago was 1936? How many years maybe? 80 something. 80 years. 80 years ago. See that in the presidential election in the U.S., they have a poll company. The famous one is the Gallup poll. You might have heard the Gallup poll. They predict the result of the presidential election in advance, and people would look up to the poll very much. But in 1936, the king of the polling company is called Literary Digest, and they predict the result of the presidential election between FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who is a Democrat at that time, versus Alfred Landon, representing the Republican Party in 1936 election. Okay. Now, thank God, we have English also, so I don't have to explain it to you. It's just the same slide. Okay. The sample size of that survey is very large. They send out something like 2.4 million questionnaire being sent. Sample size is 2.4 million. Literary Digest poll predicted Landon would beat Roosevelt by 56.43 or 56 to 43%. But the result showed that Roosevelt won a landslide election by 62-38. This is a big mistake of the polling company. Okay. Literary Digest used an inappropriate sampling frame. At that time, they used the phone books. How many years ago, Mimi? 87 years ago. Not everyone household in America had the telephone. Telephone was luxurious at that time. They used the membership of country club. You know what country club is? It's a club for rich people. You go and play golf and do some other activities. So the membership is very limited to a certain class of people. And then by using an inappropriate sampling frame and draw sample out of that population made a very a wrong prediction of the presidential election. The result, the Literary Digest went out of business, and Gallup poll is replacing it. Right now, if you want to know about the election in the U.S., we will see what the Gallup poll says. You see, so it's now another word is the master sample. Master sample is a standard sample frame that we created for use in studies or research in a particular city or particular area. At one time, the Thai government employed a university in Bangkok, I think, to create a master sample for Bangkok. And in that, they draw very careful sampling from each sector of the city and compile it and become like a thick book like this, like a telephone book. If you want to do research in Bangkok and you want to get a good representation of your sample to the population of Bangkok, you don't have to do it again. Go to that book and draw a sample from that book. That book is a master sample. Okay. And also sample size. You know the sample size. Sample size is the size of the sample or the number of sampling units that we selected for our study. Okay. Sampling size can be large or small depending on many factors. If the characteristics of the population is homogeneous, the sample size can be small. If it is heterogeneous, the sample size must be large to get a good representation or representativeness of the sample to the population. If the population is exactly the same, every unit is exactly the same, you can draw just one, and then it would represent the whole population already. You don't need a pint of your blood drawing from your body. You can take maybe 1 or 2 cc. That will represent your blood of your body already, because every unit of the blood in your body is the same. Every unit in the population, which means your total blood in your body, is exactly the same. So just draw one drop. That's enough. But if the characteristics of the population is so heterogeneous, and then you have to draw many of them to make sure that it represents the population. Okay, that's one factor that determines the sample size. The second one is the availability of resources. How much resource you have, how much time you have, how much money you have, how much manpower you have. If you have unlimited time, unlimited budget, unlimited manpower, then you can have as large as, sample as large as possible or as you wish, because there's no limitation. You see, in management we have an assumption that if the resources are unlimited, you don't have to study management. You can practically get the job done. Do you agree with me? You have unlimited money, unlimited power, you can always get the job done without relying on your managerial skill. Nasel doesn't seem to agree with me.
This is prioritization. You should predict what it is.
Yes, but that is not the reality. We have everything limited. That's why we need techniques That's why we need management. We need so many things. You see. Okay, availability of resources. Errors allow. If you error allow or discrepancy between sample statistics and the parameters, if you allow like 25% mistake, then you don't have to worry too much about sample size. You see, if you allow, normally in research we allow only 5%. We call it sampling error 5% standard. Lower than 5% is desirable, but 5% is okay. It's not that much. Now, there is a misconception about sample size. Someone said that sample should be proportionate to the population. Let's say if the population is in the 100, you may need to take 25% of them. Or the population in the thousands, you can take 10%. But if the population is the tens of thousands, and then take 5%, this is almost ridiculous. You reduce the sample size as the population is getting larger because of what? Because of the availability of resources. You cannot do 10% of the 100,000 because if the population is 100,000, 10% is what? 10,000. You can do survey research with 10,000 population. You know how long would it take? How much money and manpower would it involve? That type of thing. So this is a misconception. I did one research project in the northwest of Chiang Mai. There is a river in Myanmar. We call it, in Thai we call it Salawin. I don't know, English probably the same, Salawin River in Myanmar. And this Myanmar is strange. It runs through Myanmar, but certain part of the river going into the territory of Thailand and then curving out into Myanmar again. And then we thought perhaps we can make use of this portion of Salawin River to supply the water to Chiang Mai province. So they decided to put a dam and things like that to regulate the water of the Salawin River, Burmese river, but just gets into Thailand. We thought that, well, it's our sovereignty to do whatever we can or we want. It's on our territory. This of course creates some international conflict. But anyway, the government decided to do a research on that if we draw a river from Salawin, what would happen to the villages that stay along the Pai district. I did a long time ago. I think this research. What? Oh, I'm sorry. So, can you stop for a while? I shouldn't have let it happen. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now it's gone now. All right. I put it on the airplane mode. Okay. All right. We are recording or not? We stop recording.
I think carry on just there.
Oh, okay. Well, in that research, the government hired a consulting company in Bangkok, and the consulting company approached me if I can do the economic research of certain villages that would be affected by this irrigation project. How much damage would it cause and things like that. You see, they just told me that Prisha, you took 25% of the population being affected with no theoretical backup at all. They just come up with 25%. And I try to calculate sample size and present it to them that it doesn't have to be that large. This size should be enough. And they said, just take 25%. And then I have to take 25%. This is called who control the budget, control the decision making. Well, anyway, just to let you know that this type of calculation has no logic behind it at all. 25%, 10%, 5% of such and such. You have to do calculation the other way. Misconception number 2.
Because the reason that if you've got 10 people and you take 10% is only 1%. So it's not a good sample.
No, not
so
at
if there are 10 people, you take at least 50%
yes.
or more.
The smaller the population, the larger the sample. Yeah, this is quite erroneous way of thinking. The second misconception is that samples should only have a minimum number of sampling unit so and so. For example, should not be less than 40. I have heard many times. Your sample size should not be less than 40. And the reason for that is certain statistics that you will use against this sample require minimum sample size of not less than 40. If the sample size is less than 40, the result of the calculation doesn't make sense anymore. Things like that. Now you got it right away. Okay. Third misconception is that the larger the sample, the better it is, as it increases the accuracy of the population representation, which is not true. If you have 50% of the population, but your techniques of drawing sample is inappropriate, it cannot guarantee the representation of the sample to the population. Okay. Are you sleepy now?
No, I was just thinking of the
Yeah.
sample that we asked our students to take for the biography for Discovery Diagnostics. We tell them, try not to ask, get your sample from your fellow Christian brothers and sisters. Try to go out to your workplace and receive that. And then also we say, try to, you don't need to have 40 or 50 respondents, because after a while all the samples start to sound the same because you haven't changed. Their perception of you, if you get like 5, 6, 7, 8 people saying the same thing about you, then even if you got 60, 70, 80, they'll still say the same thing about you because it's a mirror of your behavior.
Why do you require that? Not talking to someone whom you know or
Okay.
use that for
So
the first place.
the first requirement is try not to get Christian brothers and sisters in your own church to give external validation, because they only see your Christian side, and the mercenary side of you, the side that's expected of you, especially as a pastor. Try to get sample from your workplace or your Monday to Friday marketplace. They are not necessarily Christian. They see you, or indeed your own parents, spouse, and children. That also helps you.
I think what you are trying to do is to prevent any bias or biases that the respondent can have if you ask certain people. This is very true. by the time that I applied for the judge of the family and juvenile court of Chiang Mai, they need 5 recommendations. Only one can be from my associate in the workplace. The other 4 has to come from different people, different background. And then I just supply the name, and then they are the one to send the interview or the questionnaire for the recommendations. So when people get the letter from the court, they were so frightened. What did I do wrong? And then they open it and then they say, oh, this is about Prisha. I says, okay. But I can. What's the English word for that? I can select the names. That is already by us. I select the name that I am pretty sure that they would give me a good recommendation. That's happened. You see, but they didn't do it random.
Yeah.
If they require me to send like 20 names, and then they do it randomly, and then probably.
Sometimes, and then any anonymous feedbacks better, especially from your subordinates. If you don't give a name, they'll tell you that it is anonymous. Your boss doesn't know that you give feedback. So the other thing we talked about is that if you ask a church, it will be homogeneous group. They see in a certain direction. So you're going to get a sampling from the church, your relatives, your colleagues, or your like classmates in the past, that kind of thing. So in a way, you have different sample, different groups. So it's not just from the church, not that bias, but rather that they only see in certain vocabulary is the same all the time.
As long as it's not me to supply the name. If they pick up the name, that would be a good representativeness.
So exactly the CV, your reference is only people who speak.
See, you know that sometimes reference doesn't work that well in the today's world. Okay, now it doesn't depend on the size of the sample. Okay, let me it's got a Thai. I think we have English. I forgot to erase it. You know that how I create this slide? I have all the slides in Thai. I have to translate it into English, compare slide by slide, and after I finish translation, I erase the Thai slide. But this must be the one that I didn't slide. So I just put another one. Maybe you can, okay. Methods of sampling can be divided into 2 major types. We call it, the first type is the probability sampling. Okay. The probability sampling means that each sampling unit has an equal chance to be selected into the sample. For example, we are 5 here. Let's say this is the sample of 5. I have a good pen here. I want to give it to one of you. And if I want to make sure that each one of you has an equal chance to be given this pen to, or to receive this pen, what should I do? You see, I can just put all your name and put it in a box, and then ask someone to draw it one. Whoever the name appear in that drawer get a pen. That you have a equal chance of 1/5 to be selected. Okay, this is called probability sampling. We know the probability of each sampling unit to be selected, you see, from the population into sample. The first kind of probability sampling is called simple random sampling, or the SRS, which can be done by 2 methods. The first method is called lottery method. You know how you have lottery, right? They draw. I don't know, in Thailand they have a drum, and they just draw every second week, and then the number, every number from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0 has an equal chance of being appeared in that draw. This is called lottery method. Like I put all your names in a box and then we pick like that. But it would become troublesome if the population is large. You cannot put, 25,000 names, and it's just troublesome. So they create what we call the table of random numbers. How to create a table of random numbers in the older days is exactly the same as we do the lottery, you see. And then every time that the number appear, like this time 1, the next time 7, next time 0, they just write down every number and compile those numbers, become the table of random numbers. You can find a table of random numbers on the back of every statistics book. If you have statistic book at home, just open the appendix. One of them would be like a table of, random numbers. Just something like this. They make it 5 digits, make it easy to that we can see. In reality, all the number is just one row, like that. So this one you can use for simple random sampling. You know how to use it? No? Okay. Let's say you have 100 sampling units, that is the population. You want to draw 25. Okay. If you want to use these random digits or table of random numbers, you can start with any column, but don't always use the first left column or the first right column. That would be biased. You should start with anyone. You put a number into each sampling unit, starting from 001 to the last number is 100, 1 to 100. And if you, let's say, if you start with this one, okay, 265 would be more than 100. So you move. The way you move, you have to be consistent with the way you move. You can move to the right or diagonally or to the left. And then whenever you come across the number less than 100, you pick one. You pick one of them. This is very difficult because the random number table usually has many pages, but I just pick one page. Let's say if I'm sorry, can I go back? All right. If you come across the number like this one, the second row from the bottom, and if you take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column, if you come across 13016, you pick up 016 from the sampling unit. So a person who has the identification of 016 would be selected into your sample. By doing this, you guarantee the probability of everyone to be selected into the sample. Good thing that we don't have to do this anymore. Right now the computer can generate this. They can determine the sample size, they can draw a sample for you, and then it will be done just like that. Okay, that's easy. I haven't tried with AI yet, but the statistical program can do this for you.
Now we have app called Bitwarden.
Bitwarden.
So if you have highly sensitive information on your laptop, let's say financials and or stuff, and you want to ensure that no one can break in, you use a random number, which is generated by Bitwarden.
Bitwarden. I haven't heard of that. Explain to me.
The reason for the password being random is so that nobody can break into your laptop or your system to extract personal data they're not supposed to be looking at. So the problem with random numbers is that you can't remember the number.
Yes. You write it down. Write it down somewhere.
Neither are you allowed to write it down.
No.
Or
You're
put
not.
it in any text or send it to anybody or email it. So
Can you write it to be used by yourself?
no, you are not allowed to write it down at all because the random number changes every day.
Oh.
It's like a nuclear code. You can't just anyhow.
Oh, okay, okay.
So the
Like in the movie, yes.
So the app spins the number and then it produces a randomly selected sequence of alphanumerics, which then you carefully plug into your password, the password, which then opens the drawer for you. And then when it's closed, you cannot open it with the same password. It's randomly generated.
Can this be used to prevent a scammer?
That's what it's for. It's to stop people from coming into your system unauthorized. It's something like a highly sophisticated key to any kind of computer system, including government systems, military software, and all that. Supposedly random. But of course, if you are the tech person behind it, and you leak the secret of this system out to some unauthorized alien force, they can then break into your system.
But if it can be done by the machine every time you use it, it cannot be. If you leak it this time, next time it's not the same.
No, you don't leak the password because it's not relevant. You leak the system.
And
then how do you, because somebody has to manage this.
Yes.
So these tech people are sort of like the cyber security Cisco people who could be vulnerable to
Is Bitwarden for free to be used?
There's a free version.
Wow. Have you used it before?
All of this laptop is a Bitwarden protected.
Wow.
All the ones that we renovate, and then supposedly,
But in our sampling purpose, we don't need that kind of guarantee randomness like that. Okay. But it's good to hear. First one, simple random sampling is considered the best random. It's the best sampling techniques. It's a little bit difficult to do, but it's the best guarantee that the sample would represent the population. Now, a second kind of probability sampling is called systematic sampling. In systematic sampling, we have to determine the interval of the sampling units with a formula as this: I equals capital N over small n. Capital N is the total number of population, and small n is the sample size. For example, if we have 100 people as a population and we want sample size 25, the interval would be what?
100 over 25.
4. Yes. So you assign the number to each sampling unit from 1 to 100, and then you can start anywhere, and you make an interval of 4. Every fourth unit you take 1. Every fourth unit you take 1. Every fourth unit you take 1.
Decimate.
Yes.
Every 10 people you kill.
Yes.
Every 10 people you kill.
Right. That is systematic sampling of killing. Yeah.
It's genocide.
and then you will get the total sample size of 25, and then you would exhaust the list of the sampling units in the population already. You see, systematic sampling is easy to use. Like if you have 10 households, if you have 100 households in the village or in the city or in the block, and then you assign number to each unit, 1 to 100, and then you draw every fourth one, it would be included in your sample. That's how it goes. Systematic sampling. Stratified sampling, sometimes they call it stratified randomization, but anyway, stratified sampling is done like this. You divide the population into strata, see, and within the same stratum, make sure that the sampling units have the most similar characteristics, but between stratum, make sure that it is as much different as possible. If you understand it right away, or you have some question to ask. Okay.
Strata would be an example of low income and high income.
Could be. If you use income as a stratification, you see, as a measurement. It could be education, you see. You can have primary, secondary, and after secondary is what?
Tertiary.
Tertiary, okay. Primary, secondary, tertiary. All the primary people, education people, would probably be the same in terms of learning, and secondary is also the same, and tertiary is the same. So this is stratified by level of education. So when people say that I use stratified sampling or stratified random sampling or stratified randomization, they mean this way. Okay.
Very good. We have new vocabulary for modalities, which are stratum.
Okay.
The 7 stratums, and if you want to confuse people, just say, "Oh, we're using the stratified randomization method."
All right.
And then they'll think, "Wow, this is very scientific." It's just observation.
I love your sense of humor. Jerry.
Pastor, you already used the word strata.
Okay. Now, when you divide population into strata, and then in each stratum you can use either systematic or simple random technique to draw the sampling units to be included into your sample. You see, stratification is only a way to make sure that every stratum would be included. If you do the simple random sampling in the first place, chances are that the secondary would not be represented, or the tertiary would not be represented, or if the primary would not be represented. This is to make sure the representation. Sorry for the Thai. Okay. The fourth one is cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is like stratified sampling, but we divided population into clusters. And within the clusters, you have a mixed characteristics of population. But between cluster 1 and cluster 2 and cluster 3, they are almost the same. So in other words, you use a cluster as a sampling unit. Can you think of the cluster in real life? That within a cluster there is a mixed characteristic of population. And in this cluster is also a mixed characteristic of population. Between cluster 1 and cluster 2 is very similar, but within the cluster is so much diverse, so much different.
What about marine parks, where you have a whole bunch of corals and a biosphere or ecosystem of different types of fish and eel and algae and things, compared in Malaysia versus one in Philippines?
They're very similar between the
similar
cluster.
But different.
They were within it, so different, so diverse. Yeah, that can be. Yes. Only problem is that we cannot interview the eel or the coral.
But we can taste them. We can taste it. Sampling. Seafood, you can observe.
Yeah, you can observe.
Ecosystem. When you observe what kind of talk about this.
I did one research project using this cluster sampling technique when I was in Bangkok working with the National Research Council at that time. You see, I go to the northeastern part of the country, one of the provinces, and I try to draw a sample, which is very, very difficult to do so. But I noticed one thing, that the Buddhists, they have temples, and on once a week, almost like Sunday to the Christian, but they have the Buddhist holy day. Okay, once a week they would go to temple to pray, to make merit, to offer food to the monk, and so many things. And it is very interesting in Thailand that people who live in the village next to each other, this would go to temple A, this would go to temple B. They never change. They are so loyal of going to the temple to worship, in the Buddhist holiday. But so in a village there might be like so many temples, and within that temple you have people of mixed characteristics, socio-economic characteristics. There's rich people, there are poor people, there are older people, there are younger people, you see, and then there are highly educated people, there are not so highly educated people. Each temple has the same kind of characteristics. They mix like this. So I said, wow, this is good. So I picked temple as my sampling unit. I select 3 temples. You see, we call it cluster. 3 clusters, cluster of people within that temple. And when the holy day of the Buddhist comes, we send the interviewer to go to that temple and ask for permission to interview people. And usually the abbot would say, yeah, please, we are delighted that you come. And then when the Buddhists go to the temple, they have to pray and recite certain precepts. One of them is just like the 10 Commandments. Do not lie. Something like that. Which means that after they say that, whatever you ask from them, they would say, or they would tell you the truth, because they just pray that they won't lie. So this is a very good technique. So when I explain this technique to the committee, they laugh. They like it very much. This is some cluster sampling. You see what I mean? Okay, good.